Why do the quietest people often command the deepest respect? Why does their silence seem louder, more powerful than 1,000 shouted words? There's a strange kind of gravity to those who speak less. You've seen them, the ones who don't rush to fill the silence in a room. They listen, they observe, and when they do speak, every word lands like a stone dropped into still water, measured, intentional, impossible to ignore. It's not just charisma. It's not a performance. It's something deeper, something ancient, something stoic. Today, we're peeling back the layers behind this powerful silence, because those who speak less aren't simply shy. They're not passive. In fact, they might be the most deliberate and self-possessed people you'll ever meet. There's a philosophy, one that has shaped emperors, warriors, thinkers, and seekers that underpins their every quiet moment. And that philosophy is Stoicism. But don't worry. This isn't going to be a boring history lesson about old men in togas. This is about how you can reclaim control, power, and peace through silence. By the time you finish this video, you'll understand how speaking less doesn't make you invisible. It makes you undeniable, because silence, when practiced with awareness, becomes a force, a tool, a signal of power that needs no validation. So hit that like button, and more importantly, stay with me until the very end. Each trait we explore will build upon the last, shaping a roadmap to not just understand silence, but to own it. And remember, sometimes the loudest thing you can say is nothing at all. 1. Silence confuses your opponent. There's a moment in any argument where the unexpected happens. You don't react. You don't fight back. You simply go still. That moment breaks the pattern. Most people are used to sparring with words. They expect retaliation, resistance, rebuttals. But silence? It's like holding up a mirror, and people are forced to confront themselves in it. Instead of escalating, you de-escalate. You pause. You observe. Like a rock in a river, you don't block the current. You just endure it. Your silence becomes a form of power, reflective, immovable, and strangely unsettling to those who expect noise. Lao Tzu once said, "Silence is a source of great strength, not because it's empty, but because it's anchored." The Stoics believed in mastering the self, not reacting out of impulse, not giving others control of your emotions. In silence, you reclaim that control. You see their words as just that, words, not truth, not threat, just noise. And when you don't play their game, they have no move left to make. Your stillness becomes your armor, your silence, a strategy. While others reveal their emotions, insecurities, and agendas, you remain unreadable, solid, composed. In that quiet moment, you're not backing down. You're stepping up mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's not about being passive. It's about being purposeful. 2. Silence eliminates distractions. We live in a world addicted to noise. Notifications, arguments, commentary, opinions about opinions. It's overwhelming, and yet most people accept it as normal. But the Stoics didn't. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic thinker, wrote in his private journals, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Now ask yourself, what would it look like if you stopped reacting to the world's constant noise? What would happen if you chose silence? In that silence, you'd begin to filter. You'd begin to see what truly matters, because silence doesn't just shield you, it sharpens you. You can hear your own thoughts again. You can reflect instead of reacting. You can respond with intention, not with emotion. The great Stoics understood this. They didn't avoid speech, they refined it. Every word was to be considered, like a sculptor carving stone. Precision over volume, substance over noise. By choosing to speak less, you force your words to carry more. You reduce clutter, not just in conversations, but in your own mind. Suddenly, you're no longer drowning in distractions. You're swimming in clarity. And in that clarity, something powerful happens. You reconnect with yourself. You begin to trust your inner compass. You stop chasing validation. You stop filling space just to avoid silence. Instead, you let the silence work for you, because silence isn't weakness. It's focus. It's the ability to choose when, why, and how to speak, if at all. In a world that screams, the person who whispers with purpose commands all the attention. And in the chapters ahead, we'll explore how these silent strategies aren't just philosophies. They're tools for leadership, emotional mastery, and deep, unshakable peace. So take a deep breath, let the noise fade, and prepare to uncover the strength that lives within the stillness. When was the last time you truly listened to someone else, or even to yourself? Today's journey calls us back to an ancient wisdom, the practice of eliminating distractions in order to reconnect with the world and our inner lives through silence. But why is this trait speaking less so vital in our modern whirlwind of notifications, headlines, and endless chatter? Because in a world obsessed with speed, silence is how we reclaim depth. Every word you speak holds the potential to either build or break, to enlighten or to confuse. In choosing silence over chatter, you give your words the rare opportunity to breathe, to settle, and to land in the hearts of those listening. This is the foundation of intentional communication, one that values not just what is said, but how, why, and when. And this restraint? It's not repression, it's respect. Respect for the listener, respect for the message, and above all, respect for yourself. It's a Stoic reminder that strength lies not in verbosity, but in simplicity, in the spaces between our words, in the stillness where understanding grows. But how do we live this in practice, especially in a world that's constantly pulling us toward distraction? It starts with intention. It means choosing to pause before reacting. It means letting a moment of silence fill the gap between hearing and responding. It means stepping away from the screen, the scroll, the noise to reconnect with clarity. These small acts of stillness create space to reflect, and reflection is where refinement begins, where your thoughts crystallize and your message gains meaning. Speaking less isn't just about quantity, it's about quality. It's about letting your words carry weight, not just volume. So I invite you to begin this practice right now. Embrace moments of silence. Notice how your conversations shift. Watch how people lean in, not because you're louder, but because you're more deliberate. You'll find that as your words become fewer, they become richer. Your thoughts gain clarity, and your relationships take on new depth. This isn't about suppressing your voice. It's about honing it, shaping your communication with care and precision. In the end, you're not just talking less, you're living with greater purpose. As the Stoics taught, true wisdom doesn't shout, it whispers, and those whispers carry more truth than noise ever could. Let this be your journey, one of calm, focused intention, of clarity over chaos, of speaking when it matters and meaning every syllable. Now let's explore another dimension of this power. 3. Silence attracts attention. Yes, you heard that right. In a noisy world where everyone fights to be seen and heard, silence has become magnetic. In conversations, it's like the calm before a storm, or the still pause between thunderous beats in a symphony. It doesn't just fill space, it shifts energy. Picture this. Everyone's rushing to get their point across, but you're composed. You wait. You observe. Your stillness doesn't make you invisible. It makes you irresistible. Your silence becomes a signal, not of hesitation, but of confidence. It's the difference between needing to speak and choosing to. People begin to wonder, what is he thinking? Why isn't she speaking yet? That curiosity becomes your unseen advantage. You've just shifted the dynamic of the entire room. In the teachings of Stoicism, this is the power of restraint. To act with deliberation, to speak not from impulse, but from awareness. To understand that silence itself can be a tool shaping interactions without ever raising your voice. Think of silence as a canvas. When you don't fill it, others do. You give space for ideas to rise, for emotions to settle, for conversations to deepen. And when you choose to listen instead of react, you're not retreating. You're engaging differently. You're understanding others, not just hearing them. You're stepping into their world without trying to dominate it. That is empathy in action. And empathy, rooted deeply in Stoic practice, is what builds meaningful relationships at work, at home, and even within yourself. Because silence isn't just about external restraint. It's also about creating space within, to think clearly, to process deeply, to know yourself better. So the next time you enter a conversation, remember, you don't need to be the loudest voice in the room to be the most impactful. Sometimes the quietest person says the most without saying anything at all. And in the next section, we'll explore how this silent strength can be used not just to attract attention, but to lead it. 4. Silence amplifies your impact. There's a certain kind of power that lives not in how often you speak, but in how deliberately you do. The Stoics understood this. They didn't chase attention with noise. They didn't waste breath on words that didn't serve truth or clarity. Instead, they practiced the art of intentional speech, where every word was shaped by reflection, and every pause was filled with purpose. When you speak less, but with more care, your voice carries a different kind of weight. People listen, not because you're loud, but because you're anchored. This is the power of quality over quantity. It's not about shutting down conversations. It's about making your words matter more. Silence becomes the frame, and your words the artwork inside it. In fact, the less you speak, the more people tune in when you do. Imagine walking into a noisy room. Everyone's talking over each other. Then someone speaks, but only once, and with purpose. The room stills. That person, they're the one who leaves an impression. This isn't coincidence. It's presence. By mastering the balance between silence and speech, you enrich every exchange because you've filtered the noise and chosen only what truly needs to be said. You stop throwing words like darts in the dark. Instead, you speak like an archer, aiming with intention. And it's not just your communication that improves, it's your relationships, your leadership, your sense of self. When you pause more, you connect more. That pause is your power. 5. Silence builds strength. There's something magnetic about the person who can sit in silence and still hold a room. They don't demand attention, they command it simply by being rooted, calm, fully present. This is the strength born not from force, but from depth. And it's one of Stoicism's greatest lessons. That real power comes from within. By speaking less, you make room for inner conversations, those quiet dialogues where you confront your thoughts, your fears, your values. These moments of stillness aren't empty. They're the furnace where self-awareness is forged. Think of silence as your mind's personal gym. Just like a body is strengthened through focused physical training, your mind gains clarity and resilience through time spent in thoughtful quiet. You're not escaping the world, you're building your capacity to face it. You start to notice patterns, emotional triggers, the voices that aren't yours but live inside you. And in that awareness, you begin to choose differently, not reactively, but wisely. The quiet becomes your teacher. It doesn't yell, it reveals. And what it reveals is your center, that part of you that remains calm when storms rise. That part of you that doesn't flinch when criticized. That doesn't boast when praised. The more you sit with silence, the more you uncover a kind of peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. A stillness that stays with you no matter where you are. And from that place, your decisions become clearer, your actions more intentional, your words fewer but more powerful. This is not passivity. This is precision. Now consider how this strength radiates outward. When your life is built on inner stillness, your presence changes the energy of every room you enter. People feel it. They sense something rare, someone who's not trying to prove anything, someone who simply is. This calm becomes contagious. Your clarity gives others clarity. Your restraint gives them permission to pause. And that's when real connection happens. Silence, in this sense, is not a retreat. It's a revolution. It's how we shift from reactive living to intentional living. It's how we start responding from a place of truth, not emotion. And it's how we learn to live by our values, not by the volume of external noise. So what does it really mean to speak less and listen more? It means forging a deeper dialogue with the world, yes, but more importantly, with yourself. It means discovering what truly matters before you express it. It means moving through life with calm conviction rather than desperate speed. And when we embrace this mindset, we start to reflect the Stoics of old, not through rigid silence, but through powerful presence. We become resilient, clear-headed, intentional, and in a world that's constantly shouting, that quiet resolve becomes the loudest voice in the room. 6. Freedom from pride or arrogance. Now here's the next shift, and it's one of the most misunderstood. To be free from pride or arrogance doesn't mean belittling yourself. It doesn't mean pretending to be small or denying your strengths. Instead, it means having the clarity and courage to see yourself as you truly are, without exaggeration and without shame. It's walking that fine line between confidence and conceit. On one side is arrogance, a noisy overcompensation for inner fear. On the other is false humility, a quiet disguise for hidden pride. But true Stoic humility, it walks the middle path. It says, I have value, but so do others. I have talents, but I also have limits. I don't need to shout to prove my worth. And what cultivates that kind of balance? Silence. Because when you're not constantly explaining, justifying, defending, you begin to feel secure in simply being. You don't perform for approval. You live in alignment with your principles. You listen not to reply, but to understand. That's the beginning of real freedom from ego, from comparison, from noise. And it all starts with choosing to speak less and listen more. Imagine walking through life not with your chin raised in pride, nor your gaze lowered in shame, but with your eyes wide open, facing the truth of who you are. On one end of the spectrum lies arrogance, the illusion that we stand above others because of status, achievements, or knowledge. On the other, self-deprecation where we shrink, undervalue ourselves, and forget our own worth. But the Stoic ideal lies in the middle, equilibrium grounded in self-awareness and clarity. This balanced thought doesn't come from pretending we have no flaws, nor does it come from denying our strengths. It emerges from recognizing a simple but profound truth. We are all flawed, evolving human beings, each walking our own path. Stoicism teaches us that achievements, no matter how grand, don't make us superior. They are simply milestones on a shared human journey. And when we truly embrace this truth, our entire way of interacting with the world begins to shift. We stop seeking to dominate conversations. We stop speaking to prove. Instead, we begin to listen. We begin to understand. Those who embody this kind of humble self-assurance often speak less not because they have nothing to say, but because they value what they say. Every word is chosen with care, not to impress, but to contribute. And that is the difference between noise and meaning. This quiet strength draws others in. It builds bridges. It fosters respect. There's something magnetic about someone who doesn't rush to speak, but when they do, every word seems to matter. But make no mistake, this mindset doesn't develop overnight. It begins with one of Stoicism's most powerful tools, self-reflection. To examine ourselves honestly, not to condemn, but to understand, is a courageous act. To explore our motivations, confront our biases, and admit our blind spots is the gateway to wisdom. When we learn to accept our own imperfections, we naturally become more patient with the imperfections of others. This is where true growth begins. And as we grow, something beautiful happens. Our relationships deepen, our perspectives broaden, and our lives begin to feel richer, not in possessions, but in presence. So as you move through your days, remember, every time you choose to pause instead of push, to listen instead of lecture, to understand instead of assert, you are embodying one of Stoicism's deepest virtues. This is how authentic communication is born, not through constant speech, but through intentional silence, through presence, through truth. In the stillness, you'll find not only your voice, but the wisdom to use it well. 7. Silence in negotiation. Let's shift into one of the most practical and powerful places where silence becomes your greatest asset: negotiation. At first glance, silence may seem like a strange tactic in the fast-paced world of deals, decisions, and high-stakes conversations. But those who've mastered the art of negotiation know silence isn't weakness. It's leverage. In the Stoic tradition, silence is more than the absence of noise. It's a presence calm, watchful, and unshakably strategic. It is the pause that creates space, the stillness that lets truth surface. Picture a negotiation. One side pushes hard, eager to make their point, but the other side waits. They listen. They allow the tension to build, not out of hesitation, but from a place of control. That pause becomes their advantage. It shifts the energy. Suddenly, it's the silent one who holds the power, because they've chosen not to fill space with uncertainty. They've allowed clarity to emerge. This is not about playing mind games. It's about allowing the truth of the situation to reveal itself by not rushing it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." In negotiations, this becomes especially vital. You may not control what the other party says, but you do control your presence, your words, your silence. And in that control is your strength. When you hold back from reacting out of fear or impulse, you take the wheel. You steer the conversation not with force, but with precision. You become like the Stoic sailor, calm at the helm, unmoved by the winds, choosing when to move forward with speech and when to anchor in silence. This kind of restraint doesn't just show confidence, it shows respect. Respect for the other person, respect for the conversation, and respect for the potential that lives in the space between words, because it's in that space that true understanding is born. Silence gives others room to speak fully. It gives you space to listen deeply. It gives the dialogue time to breathe. In doing so, you turn negotiation into something more than a tug of war. You transform it into a partnership where both sides seek clarity, not conquest. So the next time you're in a negotiation, try this. Pause. Listen fully. Let silence do the heavy lifting. You might be surprised just how much more powerful you become when you say less. Have you ever paused in the middle of a conversation and truly asked yourself not, "What do I want to say next?" but, "How is the other person feeling right now?" In our fast-paced, hyper-individualistic world, empathy can feel like a forgotten art. Yet the Stoics saw it not as weakness, but as wisdom in action. Seneca, one of the great Stoic minds, urged us to treat others with gentleness and understanding, not because we expect something in return, but because we recognize our shared humanity. To show kindness is not to be soft. It is to be strong enough to make space for others. It is to see beyond your own thoughts and into the experience of someone else. When you act with sincere consideration, when you pause to think about how your words might land or how your silence might comfort you, do more than exhibit manners. You practice philosophy. And that's the beauty of Stoicism. It's not just about mastering your own thoughts, but about understanding the world through the lens of others. It's not about suppressing your emotions, but about creating emotional clarity in how you relate to others. Empathy, when guided by reason, becomes a powerful force for harmony. Even the smallest act of consideration can ripple outward, changing the tone of a conversation, transforming conflict into understanding, and deepening the quality of every relationship in your life. So how can we apply this ancient wisdom in modern, everyday moments? It begins with something deceptively simple: observation. Pay attention to the impact of your words. Notice when someone tenses up or when their eyes light up. Ask yourself, are my words adding fuel to the fire or calm to the storm? Then comes the next step, listening actively. Give people your full presence, not just your ears but your mind. Listen not to formulate your reply, but to receive the message beneath the words. In doing so, you offer them a gift, the gift of being truly seen and heard. And that, according to Stoic virtue, is a rare and noble act. When you reflect on the lives, struggles, and stories of others with the same seriousness you apply to your own, something profound happens. You stop viewing people as obstacles or tools and start seeing them as fellow travelers on the same road. Kindness becomes instinct, compassion becomes reflex, and every relationship deepens. This is the Stoic path, not cold detachment, but clear-eyed empathy, because true strength is not found in dominance or argument. It's found in the quiet courage to understand. Let each interaction become an opportunity to honor another soul, and in doing so, to refine your own. 8. The art of deep listening. In a world that rushes to speak, those who master the art of listening stand apart. Not just hearing, but deep listening is a rare discipline, and those who practice it possess a power few recognize, the ability to connect beneath the surface. The Stoics revered this practice. For them, wisdom wasn't just found in speaking wisely, it was also found in listening deeply. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave, taught that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. And those who speak less often know this truth best. They understand that silence is not an absence, but a space that allows another person's story to unfold, a space where respect lives, a space where empathy is born. Deep listening requires more than closed lips. It demands open attention. It is the art of tuning in, not just to words, but to the tone behind them, the silence between them, the emotion beneath them. Imagine sitting across from someone and giving them your full, undivided awareness. No agenda, no inner monologue waiting to interrupt. Just presence. That's what deep listening is. It's patience in action. It's ego set aside. It's a quiet, powerful form of love. Because when you truly listen, you say, "You matter. Your experience matters. I am here with you." This isn't just Stoicism, it's humanity. And in practice, it transforms everything. Your friendships become deeper. Your partnerships become stronger. Even your inner world becomes more peaceful because you've learned not to rush to judgment, but to rest in awareness. Deep listening isn't about agreeing with everything. It's about seeking to understand before being understood, and that alone can shift the course of a conversation, a relationship, even a life. So how do you begin? You start by choosing intentional silence. Turn off the inner noise. Let go of the urge to interrupt. Treat every exchange like a window into someone's soul. And when it's finally your turn to speak, your words will come not from reaction, but from wisdom. Because by then, you'll have truly heard the person in front of you. Before you speak, pause. Not just to gather your thoughts, but to make space for something greater to arise. Wisdom. Patience in listening isn't passive. It's an act of presence. A conscious surrender of the ego's need to respond quickly. When you allow silence to settle before speaking, you invite something rare into the moment clarity. Most people listen only to reply, but the Stoic listens to understand. How do we cultivate this deeper listening? It begins within, with the silence inside you. Learning to be at peace with your own stillness is the first step. Sit with your thoughts. Observe your impulses. Learn not to fear the quiet, but to welcome it. For it is only when you are truly comfortable in silence that you can begin to hear others, not just their words, but their truth. Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This simple truth, if practiced sincerely, can reshape your life. Because in a world of constant noise, the listener becomes a leader. The one who waits before speaking becomes the one whose words are remembered. Let silence become your first response, not from hesitation, but from strength. Because in that pause, there is space for empathy. In that pause, there is room for insight. In that pause, you become fully present, and that presence speaks louder than any words ever could. 9. The art of reflective wisdom. To reflect is to return inward. In an age obsessed with speed, reaction, and commentary, reflective wisdom stands as a radical act. It asks you to slow down, to consider before commenting, to ask yourself, does this need to be said? And if so, why? Stoicism has always taught us the power of intentional silence, not silence for silence's sake, but silence as a container of discernment. Reflective wisdom begins with self-observation. It is the ability to notice your speech habits, to track the moments where you speak impulsively, to catch yourself before the reflex takes over. When a friend comes to you in pain, your instinct might be to fill the silence with advice. But sometimes, the greatest gift you can give them is presence, a pause, a space in which they feel safe enough to be seen. That moment of holding space, it's a kind of love. The Stoics knew that true wisdom isn't about having the right answers. It's about having the right posture, one of humility, of curiosity, of discernment. To cultivate reflective wisdom, ask yourself 3 questions before speaking. 1. Is this necessary? 2. Is it kind? 3. Will it improve upon the silence? This isn't censorship. It's discipline. It's choosing quality over quantity, substance over sound, connection over cleverness. And in practicing this, your words become rare and therefore respected. You gain influence not by dominating conversations, but by enriching them. You begin to speak with weight. And even in silence, your presence carries power. By choosing to reflect before reacting, you become someone others seek out, not for opinions, but for clarity, not for advice, but for wisdom. This is how we honor the Stoics, and in doing so, we elevate our lives. 10. Resilience in adversity. The final trait of those who speak less is perhaps the most powerful. Resilience. To walk the path of silence is to discover an ancient strength, one that is often buried beneath the noise of daily life. In silence, we uncover not fragility, but fortitude. The Stoics taught that true strength isn't loud. It's not reactive or impulsive. It's calm, it's controlled, it's quiet. And those who embody this quiet power, those who don't rush to speak, who observe more than they explain, often possess a kind of inner gravity that draws respect without demanding it. Why? Because they show that silence is not absence, it's awareness. They are not avoiding the world. They are seeing it more clearly. They are not repressing emotions. They are refining them. Their silence is chosen. Their speech is earned. In adversity, they don't panic. They don't explode. They sit with the challenge. They breathe through the discomfort. And when they speak, it's from a place of alignment, not reaction. This kind of resilience doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from facing it without flinching, from processing emotions in silence, and choosing responses with clarity. Like the Stoic warriors of old, they are not hardened, they are tempered. Their strength has been forged through reflection, their peace protected by restraint. And you can become that person too. Each time you resist the urge to speak impulsively, each time you choose to listen with presence, each time you reflect before reacting, you are training your soul. You are building resilience. You are walking the path of Stoic mastery, and in a world of noise, you will stand out. Not because you're louder, but because you're deeper, because when you finally do speak, the world listens. 11. When words become fewer, meaning becomes greater. In a world that rarely stops speaking, choosing silence has become revolutionary. Yet those who walk the Stoic path know the power is not in how much you say, it's in how deeply you've reflected before you say it. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they all understood that speech without clarity is noise, but silence infused with insight is wisdom. True communication doesn't begin with our mouths. It begins in the stillness of the mind, in the pause before reply, in the decision to let the world settle before we speak into it. This is where the strength of speaking less begins. When we choose our words with care, each one becomes valuable. Each phrase carries presence. Each sentence becomes a vessel not of ego, but of clarity. And this is not repression. It is not fear. It is strategy, a conscious way of living. Because those who conserve their words are not holding back. They're measuring forward. They're weighing the impact. They're creating space. They're turning speech into service, not self-expression alone. Silence is not an empty space. It is a place of potential where resilience takes root. In the quiet, we begin to understand that adversity is not the enemy. It's the instructor. It reveals who we are when everything else is stripped away. And in those moments when the storm rages outside, the person who has practiced stillness within doesn't collapse. They hold. They observe. They respond, not with panic, but with purpose. This is Stoic resilience in action. It's not about hardening yourself. It's about becoming unshakable, not because you avoid feeling, but because you've trained your mind to listen before reacting, to reflect before deciding, to speak with intention, or not at all. So how do we bring this into our daily lives? It starts with a shift in perception. Silence is not absence. It is invitation. A moment to grow, a space to recalibrate, an opening to see the truth beneath the noise. When we stop rushing to reply, we begin to receive. And from that reception, insight is born. This entire journey has not been about becoming quieter for the sake of being quiet. It's been about becoming deeper. When you pause before speaking, you begin to hear what others miss. When you reflect before reacting, you become the anchor in a room full of waves. And when you finally speak, people listen. Why? Because your words are no longer casual. They're cultivated. They're rooted. They come not from emotion, but from awareness. So as we close this exploration together, hold on to this truth. Every moment of silence you choose is a moment of power. Every word you decide not to say opens space for presence. Every thought you refine before expressing adds depth to your voice. You don't need to be loud to lead. You don't need to speak constantly to influence. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Your silence, when chosen with awareness, is your superpower. And I want to thank you for walking this path with me, for choosing to go deeper, for becoming a part of this Stoic journey, not just as a listener, but as a seeker. We are a growing community, not built on noise, but on meaning, on virtue, on presence, on living deliberately. Before you go, I invite you to take a simple step. Type in the comments, "I embrace silence." Let it be your vow not to withdraw, but to rise with intention. Let it mark the beginning of a quieter, stronger, wiser version of you. Because this is more than a video. This is a transformation, and you're not alone. Thousands of us are walking this path together, learning to live with less noise and more purpose. So don't stop here. Click one of the next videos on your screen and continue growing. Because the world needs people like you, calm, aware, intentional. And your journey, it's only just beginning.